Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Application Development with ASP.NET. Here in episode number 14, Nelson is going to finalize all of our NHibernate setup. Is that correct, Nelson?
Yeah, we'll see about actually getting it doing stuff after we've filled out this gnarly auto mapping code, and I just froze. There we go. Okay, so yeah, at this point we have our stuff. We have our UnitOfWork provider, our UnitOfWork, and our UnitOfWork provider factory. And hopefully it's semi-clear as to how we're going to be using them. But I guess the first step would actually to be go ahead and hook them up.
Okay.
So at this point, these services. Let's go ahead and cheat a little bit, just for demonstration purposes. I'm going to pull in an IEntity UnitOfWork provider into our index controller, and then I'm going to write a action, and all he's going to do is grab all of the users. And our user, we're going to test out the auto mapping. We're going to test out that the integer is mapped as a identity. We're also going to test our value object. So I'm going to go ahead and create a name value object right now. And these should not be virtual. So now we have a value object, so we can test that the component is being mapped properly. And then we're going to also want to test that we have cascade all delete orphan associations working. So let's go ahead and create another just random. We're probably not going to be keeping this particular one, but let's just keep it here for testing purposes. And then let's go into our user. Let's change this to a GUID so that we can test both the GUID generator and the identity generator. And now we need an iList of addresses. And this guy owns these guys. And then finally, we need to also test that associations between these work, or between aggregates work. Actually, we're probably going to want to minimize those anyway. So yeah, let's just deal with this for now. So do you guys understand what we're mapping, or what we're trying to get auto-mapped?
Absolutely.
Okay. So users is going to equal entities.begin, and then we're going to say trans query over user. Bring in our user class, and then let's flatten it out right there. To list, this is going to bring in system.link. So then we have that, and we're just going to return content for now. We're not going to worry about a view model or anything. And we're just going to say string.join break line on users.select u.name.firstname. So yeah, so that's pretty straightforward. Then let's also create another action that's going to insert a user. And again, this part is going to be broken into our query model class, and the part that's coming up here in a second is going to be broken into our other class. So trans.store new user. some point we really need to get automated testing set up for this. This is the kind of stuff that we would be putting into an automated test.
Yep.
Or no, that has to be a new list. Use this address equals that. And then we'll just return a content saying everything worked. Okay,
nice.
so at this point it won't actually work because we do not have this set up with AutoFac yet. So AutoFac doesn't know how to serve out an IEntity unit of work provider.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to go configure that. We're going to configure that in our services, or not. I guess at this point we need to introduce the a new concept of AutoFac that we haven't yet played with, called modules, where we can break our auto mapping configuration out into modules that can be loaded into another container builder. Or we could just do it here and introduce that later.
Okay, that sounds good. Keep it nice and simple.
Okay, so we need to builder. We're going to be register typing a IEntity unit of work provider factory. As an entity unit of work provider factory. And then we only want one of these guys. Next, we want to register a we want to register an IEntity unit of work provider as a method call to the IEntity unit of work provider factory. So to do that, we're going to use the same overload of register that we did over here, where we get passed in a delegate with access to the context. So we can go ahead and say context, give me an IEntity unit of work provider factory, and then with that instance get an entity unit of work provider. And then we want these in the contexts are going to be for requests. So we want this to be in the matching lifetime scope. Or not the matching lifetime scope, the lifetime scope, sorry. And then we also need to register this as an IEntity unit of work. And I also got the one provider. I also got the other one backwards. We're registering this type as this service. So make sure you swap those guys around. So that's all the wiring up that we need. At this point, what's going to happen is that when we ask for an IEntity unit of work provider, this method is going to be called, which is going to resolve our IEntity unit of work provider factory, which is going to instantiate this class, which is then going to configure itself. And this call right here will fail because we don't have our NHibernate configuration set up in our web.config yet. So let's go ahead and do that. We have to add a config sections. Config sections need to be at the top of your web.config. We go ahead and cheat and pull down that. And then I'm going to cheat again and add in our Hibernate configuration element that we've just described with this config section. I'm going to stick this down at the bottom somewhere. And our service localhost, our database. Actually, we kind of haven't talked about that yet. Oh, there it is. So we have a local instance of MySQL installed with video demo 1 as the database that we're going to be using. So our database is going to be video demo 1. Our user ID is going to be root, and our password is going to be root, because that's the best type of root password.
Okay, nice.
And then finally, we want to instruct NHibernate, and of course, Jason doesn't have the stuff installed. So I can't remember. I'm just going to cheat again and pull this down. So hbm2ddl.auto update. And this is going to instruct NHibernate to go ahead and create the tables for us automatically.
That's a good point. Did you install the MySQL connector?
No.
Yes, let's pause real quick and we'll do that. Okay, we're back from a quick pause and a lovely debate between Zach and Nelson, and the connector has now been installed. This is a new computer.
Kind of feel bad that everybody missed that.
No, it was great. I mean,
see how fast that was?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't touch the mouse at all for that. Anyway.
That's awesome. I really hope, though, that it did catch on the video so that people could actually tell what you're doing, because the problem with moving really fast like that is that we're only capturing at 10 frames a second, so all these people trying to follow along and learn from all this stuff you're trying to present, when you move too quick, you actually cheat them out of a learning experience, just so you know.
All right, Zach. MySQL.data was not added. Never mind.
oh, so
Wait a minute, does this mean you had to go use your mouse?
Nelson, you were on to something for a second. Why did you crash and burn? No.
Because this isn't keyboard accessible.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. We added MySQL.data to the references.
All right, cool. Though, just between you and I, Nelson, Zach uses the hell out of hotkeys in Photoshop.
Oh, yeah, I do. And my mouse. It's amazing.
Just for the drawing
part. It's
part.
like this symbiotic workflow.
Okay, anyway, so now we have NHibernate configured, and we are probably going to get a huge... I wasn't expecting that.
Unless you were about to say we're about to get a huge series of errors. I mean, then you'd be, like, right on.
Oh, right. Never mind.
All right, be talking out loud about what you're doing.
Yeah, I named this as the same thing as the class. You can't have that in C#. So I just changed it to address 123. Anyway, we're probably going to get a huge error, and
we did. Is it the error you were expecting, or is it a different error?
Well, actually, kind of isn't. I was expecting the version of Fluent and Hibernate that we downloaded to be compiled against NHibernate 3, but it looks like it was compiled against NHibernate 2. So anyway, this is what we've been kind of leading up to. None of the code needs to change, but we do need to go and grab Fluent and Hibernate. We need to download it. We need to recompile it against the latest version of NHibernate. So I guess let's go ahead and do that.
Okay.
And fortunately, obviously it's all open source. We just need to grab the source from somewhere.
Source?
There we go. Well, okay, so this is built against 3.0. Let's go ahead and find the one built against... There is none built against 3.1. So let's go ahead and grab the source and recompile against 3.1.
Just going to move that over into your folder.
You mean it did?
Yeah,
or?
double click. No, it shouldn't be in your folder now. I just double click it and open it up. And
That's right. Double click it.
What am I in?
hang on. There you go.
C, okay. Anyway, so let's go ahead and get this guy extracted. To Fluent and Hibernate. In order to use their particular build system that they've been using for Fluent and Hibernate, you have to, unfortunately, have Ruby and Rake installed. But we're not going to deal with that. We're just going to cheat and open up this slin directly. And then we're going to swap out the DLLs with the ones we downloaded. And yeah. If you wanted to build it the correct way, and I'm finger quoting right now, you would have to go and grab Ruby and download and install Rake and all that stupid stuff. Actually, I take that back. It is kind of neat that the .NET community is kind of hijacking Ruby's build system. but at the same time, it's kind of obnoxious that you have to do that. So the only thing we care about is obviously Fluent and Hibernate. So let's go ahead. We don't care about the specs or the tests. We just need to grab an Hibernate, and we need to track down the location, which is, of course, off screen, because that would be just way too convenient if it weren't. There it is. Which is under Tools and Hibernate. So let's go ahead and delete the references to this guy. I don't know if this guy was upgraded, but let's go ahead and delete him anyway, and then delete these two bytecode things. And then let's go into, it was under, what was it under? Something Tools.
Mm-hmm. Tools. There you go.
There you go. So we're in here. Yeah, so here's a 3.0. Here's where it wants you to put your trunk files, so let's just go ahead and do that. This is what would happen if we had been using the rake thing. What it would do is it would copy it. We'd put the trunk files here, then it would copy it back out into here. I'm just going to dump what are in Hibernate distribution in there for now. And then we have, where did I stick in Hibernate? Is this the latest one? 329, 329? Okay, so this is the latest one. Let's go ahead and grab an Hibernate and the collections DLL, because they're the only ones that are required. Move them over there. Add a reference to both of those guys. They're under Fluent. No, they're not. They're under Tools and Hibernate. Trunk. Add the reference to both these guys. Go over to Build, Configuration Manager, switch Fluent and Hibernate over to Release Build, and right-click and build. And we have a successful build. So now we have our own custom-built version of Fluent that should be located under source, Fluent Hibernate, bin, release, and then Fluent Hibernate.dll.
Cool.
So if you ever need a Fluent and Hibernate version that is not compiled against the version of Hibernate you're working with, that's how to fix it. So let's go ahead and actually I'm going to I really just need to organize this folder. Just in case we need this build later. I'm just going to grab the PDB. And then I'm going to copy this into our lib folder. Fluent Hibernate. Copy over these guys. Actually, hold on. I'm going to delete the references and then recreate them. Delete that. Paste. Replace both of them. Go back into references. Browse. Lib, Fluent, Hibernate, add, done. And then be sure to do a full rebuild, so that's Control-Shift-B. Go back here and refresh, and we should have, awesome. It's not that bad, we just forgot to tell it to use linfoo. Which we can tell it to do right there, or rather, right there. And then, of course, this was a change to the web.config file, so when I reload over here, it's going to restart the application. And we get that because we forgot to copy local on... Oh no, we forgot to reference them at all. And like I said, the bytecode .linfoo and bytecode.linfoo, these just seem to exist in the bin folder. So I'm going to kind of use a hack. I'm going to reference them inside my... Because remember, we're not referencing them inside of our services. I'm going to reference them inside the web app, and then they should be both copy local by default. But I can go ahead and verify that. So, and hibernate.bytecode and linfoo.dynamicproxy. These are both now copy local, so they're going to be placed into the bin folder of the application, so that means they can be loaded at runtime by Fluent or by NHibernate. So I'm going to do a full rebuild, Control-Shift-B to make sure that those get copied over. Refresh. And we get a 404, which is pretty much exactly what we wanted because we haven't configured any routes that lead to this index controller. So awesome. Now we got to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and, yeah. I'm just going to reuse. We're going to completely revamp our. If I can type. We're going to completely revamp our routing here pretty soon. This is just a temporary route that was created a while ago to test something. We're going to just reuse it for now to test something again. I'm going to Control-Shift-B to get that restarted. Then I'm going to open this up so I can see the names. Create users, what we should execute first. So that route's now going to map to index create user. And I don't know why I opened up a new tab. And we get data too long for column ID at row 1.
Cool. Now we can start actually troubleshooting stuff.
This is always what happens. Can never have anything nice with NHibernate.
Oh, come on. Honestly, I felt like this is going really smooth so far, especially having to go in and recompile and everything. Oh, come on.
Okay, so we...
Wow, you sounded like you just crashed out.
Yeah, it's this thing that I completely forgot about. If we were using
Microsoft SQL Server?
Microsoft SQL Server, we would be fine right now. Unfortunately, we're not. So what we need to do is instruct MySQL. The issue is that the generator for MySQL generates a binary 16 column for GUIDs, the HBM to DDL. For MySQL, the problem is that in this version of the connector for MySQL, it requires that they're char 16s. So in order to get the connector to work properly with the binary 16s, we need to specify old GUIDs equals true inside of the connection string for this. And again, if you're using MS-SQL, there's a unique identifier column type which the DDL or HBM to DDL will properly identify. So at this point, because we're on an update, it's not going to recreate the table.
Right.
When we tell HBM to DDL to update, it will not do any destructive operations. So let's go ahead and delete this out. Drop table. And then so now HBM to DDL will... of course, it was nice and created a foreign constraint between these two. So let's go ahead and delete both these guys.
Okay. Cool.
And then I shouldn't have had to build, but I did anyway. Refresh, and now we should see a smiley face.
Hey! Telling you, smoothest yet, in my opinion.
Nice.
Okay, so that's cool. Also, this is actually kind of cool. I doubt that you have done any ASP.NET development on this computer so far, right, Jason?
Correct.
Now, you'll notice when I refresh, it kind of takes a while on Firefox. I don't think we've talked about this before. But the issue is that Firefox tries to use an IPv6 connection, and the built-in development server does not like IPv6 connections for whatever reason. So what you have to do is you have to go into, if this is only if you're using Firefox and you're noticing slowness. And when I refresh, that is really slow considering how simple the code is. So we need to get that fixed. And to do that in Firefox, we just go to About Configuration. Or About Config, sorry. I'll be careful, I promise. And now we look for IPv4 only domains, and we add localhost to that. So now Firefox will use IPv4 to work with localhost. And now when we refresh, instant. I don't even see the spinny thing.
Very nice.
And then I just refreshed a bunch of times, so we should get a bunch of data in both of our tables if everything is working properly. And this will prove that our... there we go. And there we go.
Nice.
So if I go ahead and... I can't remember what that other action was called. If we go into the taskbar bug, show users action. We see users.
Cool.
Nice.
And then I can go ahead and also prove that addresses are working. Yeah, actually, this is kind of a funny issue, or it's not a it's kind of a issue that we invented for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But because we're now wrapping all of our database access inside of our inside of an entities.begin and a transaction,
Mm-hmm.
we can no longer properly do lazy loading.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of cheat, I guess. I'm going to say toList, and then I'm going to select out. We're going to come up with a better solution for this, but for right now, I'm just going to say toList tuple, I guess is what it's pronounced as. Create u, and then u dot.
How do you pronounce that, Zach?
I'm not sure.
Zach says, sound good.
Yeah, it could be tuple, could be tuple. It probably depends on who you talk to. I haven't looked, honestly.
Okay, so what I did was I created a little tuple thing with the user and the user addresses, which loads in the addresses right there, which is a select 1 plus n, by the way, for all those SQL people who are watching right now. This is very unperformant and bad, but we're going to work on better solutions in the future. I just want to prove that addresses are being read out properly. Wouldn't it be nice if there was the little string processing language that we could embed right into C# strings so we don't have to do stuff like this? I mean, at this point, it just gets ridiculous. I know that sounds funny coming from me as well.
Yeah, I know. That's kind of why I laughed.
Okay, so there should be all of our addresses, and you don't have people watching out there. You don't have to type all that out. We're just proving that our two addresses, blend and stuff, get added properly.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, don't type that out. Please don't. So yeah, so there is our adding and querying, and that's all being automapped, and it's pretty awesome, I guess. Yeah, we didn't have to write a line of SQL, and I guess that's the entire point of working with NHibernate.
Yeah, and this is actually bringing us close to the half-hour mark, and this is going to be a perfect spot for us to go ahead and just end this one. So what are you thinking when we pick back up next?
Well, we do got to get the query model figured out, because I think we've mentioned this at the beginning when we talked about the high-level architecture of this, but the query model is going to have entities much like the domain model, but they're going to be mapped to the same tables. So they'll just basically be, this user will have behavior on him, but the behavior will be hidden behind a service layer. However, to query out data, we need to talk to the query model, which is going to have the DTO version of this. Imagine this had a bunch of behavior on it right now. It'll have this version of it, just basic data access. That's going to be mapped to the exact same table. And so we need to talk about how to get Fluent or how to get AutoMapper to properly let us map one entity to the same table as another entity so they kind of have overlap in a really nice, clean way.
Gotcha. All right, awesome. Well, excellent job, Nelson. Believe it or not, I think it went super smooth. I mean, you didn't have to fight with loads of errors over and over and over.
Great.
The progression of errors just made complete sense. So, just outstanding. And with that, thank you very much to all of our member sponsors out there, and that will wrap up this video.